On this week's episode of the HB podcast, I'm joined by Ernest Cantillon. Having studied commerce in UCC, Ernest is a major entrepreneur and businessman with a strong presence in the drinks and hospitality industry. He is the director of both Sober Lane and Electric in Cork City, and is also the director of Kinsale Spirit Co, home of Kinsale Gin and Red Earl Irish Whiskey. Hi Ernest, how's it going?
That was a great intro. It really beefed up my ego. Thank you very much.
Had to be done.
Already. Happy days. Good. How are you?
Good. Good. With the podcast coming out now every week and things, a lot of people would know that I had them pre-recorded. This is my first time recording one in a while, so really happy with how it's turned out. I've gotten some good feedback, and
it's a good one about it.
I painted. When we set up the marketing society, we like to say that we paint. The marketing society's colors were all red. We like to say that we painted Twitter and LinkedIn red for a day because there was so much stuff going up, so many retweets.
Well, there was his Twitter where I picked it up.
Yeah, and then the same with the HB podcast. I managed to paint Twitter and LinkedIn blue for a day, even though they're already blue in color. But sure, look, we'll leave that aside. But Ernest, I suppose less about me and more about you. How are you keeping? I would say that you could arguably be in the worst hit industry during this pandemic.
Well, it's funny, as you know, I was late today, and apologies, and thank you for accommodating me with the reschedule. In that it's bizarrely busy, which is in workload as opposed to customers. So Sober Lane is flying on Deliveroo and Click and Collect on that food side of it, and we had done it previously. We hadn't done it for a number of years, so there was a bit of a learning curve in that again, because it's logistically it's an entirely different business model, I guess. So we decided a day or two ago that we would take the plunge and do it in electric. So we're starting tomorrow. So that's why I was late, just trying to upload menus on platforms and all those kind of things. And in fairness, part of it was the main motivation was the team, our staff I think they were bored, to be honest with you, and had no interest in heading into another lockdown, sitting at home, and we're keen to get it going. So as I said, it's very busy in Sober Lane. I have no idea how we'll go on electric. I suppose it's not the kind of food that would usually be associated with takeaway and stuff. So we're going to see if there is a demand for that kind of stuff. I suppose we'll know. I think it's worth a punt though, and there's not a whole lot to be lost. It's just nice to see the building being open and being used and all that kind of stuff again. It's tough to see them closed.
Yeah, no, it's tough to kind of send people home. And especially it's even more tough to be at home yourself, especially when you're so busy with things on the go the whole time, and you're just sitting there then and waiting for businesses to reopen. But how many people do you employ between Sober and Electric?
I don't know how many I technically employ anymore, to be honest with you. But I suppose pre-COVID,
of course,
maybe 80. There was a time when I would have had nearly 200 people at one stage back a couple of years when I was stuck in different things. But I think Electric, say during the summer when we're busy, would be around 60. And Sober Lane might fluctuate 15 or 18. So we're down to, I think, 5 in each place now, which is kind of mental. Those numbers are fairly dramatic. No, we when we were open this summer in both places, thankfully it was actually very busy, but we were on far less opening hours than we usually would. So Electric, I think, went from 63 to 23 staff, which is a ferocious change. That was I'll have to figure out, change our job roles and that kind of stuff. But we're lucky in that we had a lot of people who, just when it happened around March, we had students who were going into doing internships or different things like that. So we had some natural attrition. So thankfully, we didn't have too many, hard conversations with people. There certainly were some. But when it sounds like that dramatic a number, it sounds like, oh my God, 40 people. But I know I talked to every one of them individually, and for most, it wasn't the end of the world, which is good. And then for the people that it was, they're tough conversations to have. So heading into the second lockdown, I suppose that's probably what I was dreading most, having those tough conversations again. But the only thing is, I suppose people are so attuned to the news and all that at the moment. Like they nearly knew it was coming before I did. So
Yeah.
we said it's okay. Yeah, we know that's fine. Thanks for trying, and give us a call when you're opening again or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's just those days are never nice.
No, certainly not. I think, as Pat Phelan said recently, that it's going to be a very tough year, but followed by unbelievable growth afterwards.
Hope so. I think we kind of could all do with a bit of hope in that regard. Like I would be a natural optimist, and I would, if somebody says how's business, I'd say flying. That would be my default answer, whether it is or not. But
Okay.
like stuff says that if the bars are closed, so
Yeah.
we'll be back and open and have activity in the building. Like it's funny, but I like there was deliveries today, and I was quite excited about them. The guys were getting in fresh fruit for cocktails and stuff, and it was just good to see deliveries coming in. Like it's
Yeah.
such I wouldn't say a novelty, but just a good, kind of we're back in business feeling,
And are you doing takeaway pints or takeaway hot whiskies or anything like that at the moment, Ernest?
No, we're not. I no reason for that. I just don't think the business would be there. I know actually Benny McCabe's pubs are doing them, and I presume he wouldn't be doing it unless it was busy. Fair play to him. But we Sober Lane, particularly in Southern Key, wouldn't be an area of high footfall.
No.
And the electric.
I'm surprised electric, because I mean,
Yeah, it just doesn't excite me. Like it doesn't.
Not something you'd consider at the moment. No, that's understandable.
Not that I wouldn't consider it. It's not kind of from any moral high ground or logistical reason or anything like that. I just, I'll be honest. I don't think we'd make any money at it. It's probably the biggest reason. I don't think we would. And to be fair, for example, I saw the Oval is doing it, and the Oval would be famous in my head anyway. Would be famous for good pints. It would be a place for really good pints of stout and stuff like that. And while Electric's pints are lovely and creamy and that kind of stuff, it's not something we'd be known for. We'd be known for cocktails. We'd be known for food. We'd be known for having a bar and a restaurant in one building, and the way they work together.
Yeah.
For the park on a sunny day outside. But see, it's the rule is that drinks takeaway aren't meant to be consumed in 100 meters of the premises. So it effectively takes the park out of the equation. So you've that natural, what gives us such an advantage on the sunny days for people drinking outside is removed by those. So it's it's not as an attractive proposition as it might sound.
You have to play by your strengths, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think you're obviously making the right call. Don't listen to me.
No. Look, good question, because I couldn't give you an answer. Like even trying to convince myself that but I don't think there's a market. Whereas we don't get me wrong, we've dishes for €8 and stuff going on the electric menu tomorrow. We've monkfish on for 24 quid or something as well, and I have no idea if a dish like that will sell on Deliveroo or Click and Collect. We're doing it because there's pretty much nobody doing stuff like that. But maybe there's a reason they're not. Either it's a niche or it's a market that is never going to find out. And I'm excited about that because I'm curious. And Sober Lane and Electric they're both doing takeaway cocktails, and they're doing it very differently. So I'm curious to see what styles work and what people are into and what price points work and that kind of stuff. And there's kind of anomalies in that. Click and collect and delivery at the same price. You'd say, why would somebody come and collect it when they can have it delivered at the same price?
Yeah, you're definitely.
For me, I think if you, Deliveroo is a great service, like your food is on the back of, in a bag on a bike. Whereas if you collect the food yourself from the restaurant, you're going to get it home hotter, faster, and in better nick. So and obviously we have to pay the delivery guy, whereas if somebody comes and collects it, it's a better margin for us. So we're trying to figure out ways to incentivize people to come and collect it. So in Sober Lane on the weekend, with all the click collect orders, we were given scratch cards and just silly things. So I think in Electric,
brilliant.
Next week they're given a free cocktail for two with every click collect order. Just
brilliant.
But the anomaly is we make more money even on that than so click and collect with free cocktails is a better margin for us than delivery with no cocktails. So there's trying to figure out that space and what it takes to get somebody off the couch to come in and collect, versus getting it
Yeah.
delivered and that kind of stuff. So it is interesting.
I think it's safe to say you've come a long way from the tin of USA biscuits, Ernest.
That story served me well. Yeah.
And we'll get into that in a bit. But what I'd like to do now is I'd actually like to, I suppose, take you back to what some people call the noughties, to the year 2000, where you began studying commerce in UCC. Can you tell me why you picked commerce, Ernest?
I can. I think BIS was my first choice, and I was only thinking of it yesterday, actually, unrelated to this. Am I any good at technology? And I think I'm a 5 to 6 out of 10, and that I'm not a Luddite, and I enjoy the applications of technology, but I'm not particularly good at it. So I think if I got into BIS, I would have really struggled in hindsight. But I think BIS was like 515 or 520 points or something. It was a real high point in relative to anything I was going to get anyway. So I didn't get it, and my second choice was commerce, and I didn't get that either. And my third choice was government public policy, which actually in hindsight isn't something I would have enjoyed at all. I don't, but I put it because I think it was maybe finance was my third. But anyway, so when the points came out, I got a CO offer for government public policy, and I started that, and I did the first week or two in UCC, and a friend of mine, Sid, was doing it, so I was happy enough to know somebody else in the class. And my English teacher, unbeknownst to me, had submitted my English paper for a recheck. Is that the word? And I went up a grade. So I had just missed out commerce, so I went up. Then I missed on random selection, so I ended up having 10 or 15 points over what I needed. So I got a place in it. So after 2 weeks, I moved into commerce. So it's kind of funny, and it you might say out of 4 years, 2 weeks, missing a big deal. But I actually missed all the freshers week and the meet and greets and all that kind of stuff, and it actually did. I was a bit disconnected because of it. So I never really got very involved in, I played rugby when I was in college, but not for college, and I never really got involved in any of the societies or anything like that. And I think part of that was because I missed those 2 weeks. Just that. So yeah. I would have. Most of the friends I made in college were friends that came from my school or whatever. I didn't kind of make that many new friends in for two reasons. One, I was hopeless at going to bloody lectures. So in fairness, that was a factor. And also, I suppose I was playing lots of rugby and stuff, and because I wasn't playing with the college team, I was playing with Sunday as well. I socialised with those guys anyway. But I did have an involvement in one society, which is a story for maybe another day or later. But I enjoyed commerce. I was always into business, interested in it. Not so sure I have any particular aptitude for it, but I just enjoy it. I was always interested in stocks and shares and that kind of stuff, and I'm certainly not a savvy investor, but I do still have an interest in them. So commerce was a good, it's a good all-rounder for that kind of stuff. I was the last year that didn't have placement, so there's no work placement, which is bizarre.
That's interesting that you say, because you graduated in 2004.
Yes. Yeah.
And my second guest, Niall Horgan, started commerce in UCC in 2004. And by the time he had graduated, he had actually gotten placement. So when he went into the course, placement had just begun. So it's interesting that you had just missed out on that.
And there was, I don't know about now, but there was no it was just somebody in a lecture talking at you. And don't get me wrong, there was some engaging lectures and some not, but there was no. It doesn't help. Like there's 200 and something of us in the class, so it's going to be hard to build one relationships. But for example, I never got up in the 4 years I was in college. I never got up and spoke to anyone in the room. I never have to present any kind of a project, which was bizarre. I never had any if it's a 4-year business course, you'd think there would be some kind of module on, say, negotiation. There wasn't.
Absolutely.
And as I said, I've no idea what's going on now. So this is just my experience, which is 20 years ago or something. But I'm kind of surprised there wasn't. And then it's funny. There's all these amazing events like startup weekends going on, and all these skills that you can pick up. And I'm thinking, why aren't these in the actual degree? these really relevant skills. I don't know if they're there now. Maybe you know.
I actually don't. And I know a few people doing commerce in UCC.
But sorry, RME and CIT and business studies, I always found they're very similar courses. They used to be anyway, because I had
Oh,
friends who did both at the same time,
within C,
and we had similar books and all
yeah,
that.
no,
Yeah.
CIT you've a completely different ball game.
Okay.
Especially for especially now for the level 7 business students. In their second year, they have a module called selling skills, where they're given a product.
I think that's on the money.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
they have to
exactly.
do a
Yeah. Yeah.
pitch, and I know it's Elaine Splan Hickey and Tim. Oh, Tim's going to kill me. I can't think of Tim's last name. Um,
I know Elaine. Yeah,
yeah,
an
but
excellent
but
lecturer. Yeah.
they sit down, they listen to the students give their pitch. Tim Crowley, that's his name. They sit down, the students give their pitch, product features, benefits, and then one student goes through the pricing. They have a kind of a little stock list, being like, if if you buy so many, we'll cut you the deal. All this kind of upselling as well with the kind of main product, and then
They're super
yeah,
skills and experience to have.
Elaine and Tim then will grill you with questions. And yeah, it
I suppose I. Sorry, I'm interrupting
no,
you. Go on.
it's really good to have that. And then last year, the marketing students would have worked with Gym Plus Coffee. There was a lot of
Yeah.
commotion made in Twitter and LinkedIn on that as well. And again, I'm in my final year now of that marketing course, and the amount of real life companies that we've worked with, I don't must be at least 10 now at the moment. And this semester we're working with 4 other companies, all Irish, businesses and. It's crazy. I don't think you.
I've had way more involvement in the last couple of years with CIT than UCC, even though I'm a UCC graduate.
Mm,
And an UCC engagement has usually been with postgrad stuff. I don't know, maybe they're still very academically focused or not.
yeah,
But I just thought that lack of real world stuff was a missed opportunity. I didn't realize it at the time, and I would say, like I had a hope as tennis rate and stuff. So maybe all these amazing things were going on, and they were over my head, or maybe I didn't attend. But I don't think so. I don't think so. Like as you said, selling skills, like what a quality to have.
yeah. It's great. No, even presentations and standing up in front of people, and the class is now open to questions and things. It's great.
Because like look, you're doing this, so I presume maybe you're nervous for the first podcast, but for the second or third, it's just autopilot, and to have that skill, that confidence to be able to speak to a group of people, is a massive skill. Like it's but once you've done it 2 or 3 times, it's
Yeah.
easy. You know, but it's just and it's a great way to get the like. If you make a mess of talking to your class, it doesn't matter. Okay, you might
Mhm.
get a poor grade in module level, but it's way less important than your pitch to a bank manager or to something else. So it's if you're going to fail, that is the time to do it, and from nerves and get them out of the way.
Yeah, no, I think the main thing I always say to myself when I would have been given presentations in college with groups is you are here to fail, because if you fail here, if you make a mistake in this presentation, you're not going to lose out in a €1 million investment. You're not going to have your manager give
Yeah,
out to you. You're going to have your lecturer give you a 2-minute talk and be like, this is what you do to improve.
constructive
So it's
criticism.
like you're
Yeah,
here to fail. You're here to learn. And the only way you learn is if you make these mistakes. So I'm I love making mistakes. Everyone knows me for making mistakes. Imagine I make mistakes so I can learn. That's why I make all the mistakes.
it's a
Um,
good way of looking at it.
but Ars, I find it interesting that you went into commerce, because I'm not from Cork originally, but it's hard not to spot when I walk on South Mall every day. Your father is also Ernest Cantillon. He's a solicitor, if I'm correct.
So my what most people know is my mother was a solicitor as well. She didn't work. She never worked with my dad. She did her own thing. But
Well,
and I have 2 brothers and a sister, and one of my brothers and my sister are both partners in my dad's firm now.
well,
So really, I suppose in one way that has taken pressure off me, in that it's lovely to see the business, the legacy, as you said, continue without it having to be me. And how that came about, I suppose, in hindsight, I know it would never be for me for a couple of reasons. One, the workload from the outside looking in looks ferocious. It doesn't appeal to me. And just the volume of reading and the level of concentration.
mm,
That's one thing. The other thing is the pressure. So like look, if I overcook your steak, I'm sorry, we'll cook you another one, or I'll give you a gift voucher, or get over it. But like, if you're handling a medical negligence case or something like that for someone, they're life changing things. So like they're highly pressurized. I didn't think of that when I was an 18-year-old filling out the CAO, but so I realized that now that it just wouldn't be for me. I just wouldn't have the intelligence or the concentration for it at all. I'm just not built for it. But when I signed up for college, ultimately commerce, I thought it'd be a back door in. I kept the door open. I kind of growing up assumed I would do it, and then when I kind of got to be 16, 17, 18, and then in college I kind of realized that it wasn't for me. But I knew that I could do a commerce degree and then go and do the black hall exams or whatever after if I wanted to. But no, there was zero pressure. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, but I've always enjoyed working with people. And I suppose not that solicitors don't, but they spend a lot of time at their desk in front of paperwork, and I like being out and engaging with customers and that kind of stuff. So yeah, but funnily enough, my father would have gone through that same decision because his father was a doctor and his older brother became a doctor and that kind of stuff, and his two sisters were nurses. And he's the youngest, so he was the only one who didn't go into the medical thing. So he kind of bucked that trend. And I'm trying to think. We're all called Ernest. I have a son called Ernest, and my father was called Ernest, and my grandfather was called Ernest. And I'm trying to think, was his father a doctor? I'm not sure, to be honest with you. Because his father again was an interesting character. He was Lord Mayor and Harvard Commissioner and stuff. But he was Charles. He wasn't. We turned the Ernest after the Lord Mayor went to pity. So we know no Ernest as Lord Mayor. That would have been a good story. But so I suppose my dad had that. Had the same. I suppose from the outside you might say perceived pressure, but nah. My parents were always very supportive. They did encourage me to go to college. And to be fair, what they said is, look, it's 4 more years where you can put off the real world. You can live at home and have a good time and play sports and go out, and as opposed to going out and getting a job, you can extend your childhood or have fun for another 4 years. And it's true, like college is a really nice, sheltered experience. Was for me anyway. So I was glad I did it, but it wasn't. No, there was no pressure for them to do any, to do any one thing or another.
Okay, that's good to hear. You also, from what I can understand, did you worked in a bar during a bit of college? Your last 2 years, Sunday as well.
Yeah, so that I'd like. I'll be honest. Before doing, I had one proper bar job before I set up my own. But that was, I played for Sundaysville Rugby Club, and a number of the members used to pitch in and work for busy match days and stuff like that. But that was kind of where I cut my teeth in it, and I enjoyed it. But it was a couple of nights a month or something. But it was I never would have been behind the bar counter ever. We've no family background of it. So it is kind of random that I've ended up in, I guess.
I don't know what's even randomer, that the fact that you would have went into the bar trade despite having no kind of older relatives in there, or the fact that you graduated with a degree in commerce, and then went on to train as a chef. How did that come about?
Yeah, I was always very interested in food, and I still am. I'm cooking dinner later tonight. I'm the chef of my own
Lovely.
household. And just to clarify that my wife is also an excellent cook.
What are you making? What are you making tonight, Ernest?
I'm going to make beef goulash, which is probably isn't the sexiest sounding dish, but it's cold outside and it's a good one. The small lads like it. And make some nice brown rice with it. And yeah, it'll be a heartwarmer.
That's good.
It'll be good.
It'll be good.
So yeah, no, I like it's already made. It's in the slow cooker. So there you go.
Unreal.
And get more organized as I get older. But so when I was coming up to the end of college, my buddies were doing I think they were called the milk rounds at the time. I don't know if they're called now, but so all the people who were getting the 1Hs and stuff were, our guests, they would be getting 1Hs, were doing interviews with KPMG and all the internships and all that kind of stuff. And I just didn't really have any interest in that. And for 2 reasons. One, I was never going to be picked by the top guys for those internships. I wasn't going to be in one of the one getting a 1H, but I knew at that stage I didn't want to be an accountant or a whatever, a finance person. So it was was it called Fault Ireland at the time? It was. So basically, it's since merged with CIT as part of Culinary
Oh,
Arts.
very good.
But the first modules you could do would fall to Ireland and then fall into the Culinary Arts program in CIT. So that's what I did. It was an interesting one because they pay you to do it, which is pretty sweet. You got 200 quid a week or something. And it went on for maybe 9 months or something like that. So it was full time. It was an intensive one. It was 9 to 5 Monday to Friday, whatever. But I really enjoyed it. It's in a place down in Albert Road that's now gone. But they had so chefing, they had bartending, and they'd waiter school. So you'd go in the morning, and they used to have guests. It wasn't open to the public, but you could invite people in, or they used to invite other students and whatever. So you do lunch service or dinner service, whatever, every day. Like so it was. I wouldn't say it was quite the deep end, but it was very practical.
Yeah.
So and you'd get turns at being the pastry chef or whatever. So it was really good. So we I loved it, but I quickly realized that being a chef was a really hard job, and I'd much prefer to be the guy, out on the floor, because I kind of miss the engagement with the customers. I think that's when So sorry, at the end of that, we had to go and get an internship again. So and I didn't want to go peeling potatoes in a hotel for 9 months or whatever rites of passage chefs got to go through. So a friend of a friend of a friend had a bar in town that wasn't doing particularly well, and they wanted somebody to have a go off running it. And that's where the bar thing came about. To be honest, it was kind of random. Somebody said, "Look, this job is going in any interest," and so it was my first job and kind of my only my first job. Is that true? My first full-time job after college and stuff in here.
And that was in a bar called Cleavers, if I'm correct.
Cleavers, yeah. So Cleavers became Kavanagh's, and so Cleavers used to be a butcher shop, and the guys converted to bar, hence the name Cleavers. And they owned lots of bars in the neighborhood, and it was the smallest of them, and did kind of a partnership model, and it was one of the only ones that none of them were based in, so it kind of floundered because it didn't kind of know what it wanted to be, and it was only half the size that Impala is now, so Impala's kind of 2 rooms, so it was just one of them.
Oh wow, that's small. If it was just where the countertop is, that's very small.
Yeah, that was it pretty much.
Jesus.
Yeah, and a small little room in the back. But we had a lot of fun there. So the staff was me and a guy called Phil, who came to Oberlin, and then Voodoo worked together for 10 or 12 years. And his brother Colin, who worked with us for a long time too. That was it, pretty much. And my sister a few nights there, but it was mostly just myself and Phil, and then and Colin helped us on weekends. Colin was only 15 or something at the time; he was still in school. So it was in the deep end, but it was deep end for us, but it was a small bar. And the owners would be floating around, by day and stuff, that's things. But it was a really good learning curve, because like I was the manager and Phil was the assistant manager, and I think the reason I was the manager is I was older than him by a year. If they were probably going the other way around. And that's where I know you were slagging about the USA tin of biscuits earlier and stuff, but it was just naivety and having fun. We had this empty room that we were trying to fill every night, and we tried all sorts of different things, and some worked and some didn't. And I know we're chatting about failure earlier. The price of failure was pretty low. Like you put up a poster for something, and if nobody comes, it doesn't really matter. You try something else the next night. Whereas the upside is if you get a full bar, the Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday, everyone else is town. That's a great result. So it was good. I hugely enjoyed it. I had never really worked nights before or anything like that. And so it was a big change of lifestyle. I was 22, maybe 23, 22. So I greatly enjoyed it. And the guys, as I said, ran this partnership model where if things were going well and you worked there, they would ask you to become a partner in the business.
Yes, this is probably my favorite part.
So I maybe it's the line I'm going to say, I don't know, but they said, look, you could buy in and have 10% of the business. So I went and asked my dad's advice, and he said, so you do 100% of the work and you get 10% of the profits.
Yeah.
I said, yeah. So he said, why don't you 100% of the work and get 100% of the profits? So this was 2005 maybe. So he said, look, I will back you. He said, if there's loan stuff, I'll guarantee it, and I'll come up with a deposit. So 20 years later, I probably still it was a massive vote of confidence from him. And what he pointed out is that the banks were back then were giving money to pretty much anyone, so they were going to give money to a 22-year-old, which they did, and I'm still giving it back to them.
Right.
But yeah, and probably will be forever. But we so look, it wouldn't have been possible except for I found myself in a fortunate situation where I was going to, have that kind of support, I suppose, both financially and, well, my dad's never been in the hospitality business. He's been self-employed for 40 years or something now, so he certainly knew about business. So I was going to have that kind of a mentor and support in the background, and even geographically, his office is. I'm sitting in my office in Sober Lane now, and I'm looking across the river at his office.
Yeah.
So he was, he was always around, and it's like, Jesus Christ, how do you do a VAT return? How do you do this, that, and the other thing? So I went back to the guys and I politely declined, and the owner there was a couple of owners, but the guy I dealt with was a guy called Tom Reardon, who we stayed in touch, and then he became my business partner in Kinsale Gin. So we work together now. The guy gave me my first job, so it's a nice little segue there. Yeah, that we became partners.
Yeah.
So my dad started looking for a place then to go and call our own,
Yeah, I it's great because essentially you were offered to buy a stake in the business, and instead you went off and just bought a business yourself.
Yeah, look, I suppose in hindsight, with the pubs closed now, you might say it'd be better to have a stake in the business than one off a closed one. I don't know, but that was 15 or 18 years ago or something, whatever. And for better or for worse, I've been self-employed since, which certainly makes me unemployable. Unfortunately, I'm stuck in my ways, good and bad. But I do often think about what life, what different journey I might have gone on if I had done that,
Do you think it would have made much difference if you had done placement in college, if you had gotten experience in, I suppose, more of a corporate kind of role, be it intern or whatever? Do you think that would have made much of a difference on your journey?
I'm trying, I'm quite undisciplined. I'm not great with rules and waiting, and I'm a bit of a pup that way. And I think that I think I probably would have struggled with the rigidity, maybe is that the word, of corporate structure. I'm not kind of anti-authoritarian or anything like that. I don't mind, somebody telling me what to do or something like that. But I just would struggle with, somebody says photocopy that 100 times. Why? Because you're an intern, you need something to do. That would drive me crazy. Like that kind of just busy work or whatever.
Yeah, I've interviewed a few people now, and I've started to kind of notice that pattern in entrepreneurs. They just want to do their own thing.
Yeah, and I like to ask why. If somebody says this way, I would do it, but why? And if you've got a reason, great. But if somebody says, "Oh, just why?" That that's the way it is. That drives me mental. Why? Why does it have to be like that? So as I said, I'm definitely unemployable now. I don't know. Look, I'm sure I probably would have. I enjoy working with people, and I have had and still have business partners in different things, and there's pros and cons. I own the bars on my own, and I had partners with them, particularly in electric. I had two really good partners who taught me all about food and restaurants. And then I bought them out over time on very good terms. I still would be in regular contact with them, but so when it's been a stressful year, and it probably would have been a nice time to have business partners for that, to share that load. Whereas it is nice in the same breath. So I think on Sunday we decided, okay, let's give Deliveroo and all that crack a go in electric. And by Monday we were lining it up. We're going live on Wednesday. So to be able to turn things around quickly and make those decisions around is good. Whereas I have, thankfully, in Kinsale Spirit Company, we're extremely busy at the moment, and that's nice. I have two business partners in that, and we have different skills, and we work on different schedules, and it just kind of works, and we challenge each other, and we kill each other sometimes, we bounce off each other, but it just, it certainly I couldn't run that ship on my own. Definitely I don't have the skills or the time or whatever. So, look, different horses for different courses, but the partnership model is one that I do like. So going back to that original, going back to Cleavers, I think I would have enjoyed it. I think I would have. I think I would have enjoyed it. What probably would have been a downside is those guys had lots of business and were opening lots more businesses quickly, and that probably wouldn't have been a good thing for me because I love opening businesses and I've opened far too many, and lots of them haven't worked over the years. So to have that even more possible probably wouldn't have been a good thing, So that access or ability to do even more new things.
I suppose you bought Sober Lane in 2005.
And we opened in 2006.
Opened in 2006.
So I didn't catch much of that old Celtic Tiger buzz. I didn't. Saw his tail just going past. There wasn't much. I wasn't around much of that because probably just as well because I didn't know what I was missing.
I suppose from what I read, you guys were quite known when it came to social media, with Sober Lane especially, and you were kind of the main direction behind all of that. You kind of ran a lot of, I suppose, some questionable campaigns and had the crack with it.
Yeah.
What do you reckon? I suppose if you can give an example or two, some of your favorite things that you would have done with Sober Lane, especially.
Yeah, it played a big part in Sober Lane and Electric to lesser extent. But so back then, like Sober Lane is older than Facebook, so there was Bebo, and then there was before Facebook was mainstream anyway. And then we got into Facebook, but there was no paying for ads, or certainly there was none of the science for analytics or targeted campaigns or anything like that there is now. So really, it was just whoever's most creative or innovative or outrageous wins. So. And I suppose when we opened in 2006, every bar in town was very busy. So you didn't need to be out there. So for us, we were new and we were empty, so we did. So we, Sober Lane for a long time had the most followers of a bar, any hospitality business in Ireland for years. And it was just because we just kept plugging away at it, and maybe other businesses didn't need to. And then I guess from the recession, they were distracted, and had other, more pressing issues going on. But we had would say the space to ourselves, but there wasn't many other innovators or disruptors out there that I could see anyway in Cork doing it. The other thing was people like Joe Darry and all that were starting off, and they were far more accessible. So you could send them a story, and it was quite easy to get them to share things, and they were looking for things to share. It wasn't $3,000 to have a featured story or any of this crack. They were just looking for content. So you could, when I say viral, I'm not sure we didn't that went truly viral, but you could get things out there quite quickly and cheaply or for free. They just had to be
creative.
Yeah, to be watchable. So and again, part of it was naivety. We just had fun. So we some of the fun ones we did, definitely. There was an Employee of the Month video with Alf from Home and Away, and that was good fun.
Oh wow.
I knew a guy. I think if you Google Sober Lane Sober Lane Employee of the Month, it's good fun. It's a fun video. It's probably one of my favorites. So he was in Ireland fishing, I think. Ray Mars is his name. He's in real life outside Summer Bay, whatever, living into fishing, and he was doing some appearances. And I knew somebody who said, "Look, this guy's doing an appearance. Any interest?" I said, "Fuck it, he's up for the video." It was great fun. So he was there for an afternoon, and we had a lot of fun. So we did a video, and then we did kind of a candid camera thing where he agreed to just serve customers, but they didn't know that it was him. No. So he dropped down the food. People would be like, "Is that Alf from Sober Lane?" So somebody, whatever. So that was good fun. That was good. Then one of the nicer coups we had was the first Arthur's Day, first or second Arthur's Day that Diageo did. Like that got really big, really quickly, and they had a public vote. So it was one of the few times that these things weren't just geared for the bigger bars and nightclubs. So it said any bar can enter, and whatever bar gets the most votes from its customers will send. There was a list of 8 acts, and you could pick one, or they'd assign one, or was the most suitable ever. So we got Ellie Goulding. So we won, and Ellie Goulding played in Sober Lane, and so I think we were allowed to invite 50 people, and then there was a competition for the public for the other 50, and there was, say, 100 people here.
Jesus.
And it was great fun. So she necked a pint of Guinness on stage and seemed like a very nice lady. Look, we've had fun with random things like that. None of them really cost anything. A lot of the things we did were silly pranks that, I'll give an example of the Sober Lane mentality. I don't think we're going to be able to do it for Halloween, so it doesn't matter if it's not a surprise because I can't get them in time. But I think they're traditionally a dog toy. You can get a bloodied, severed hand. There's you'd see in shops. So for Deliveroo this weekend, our plan was to put every one of those in every order. So like, it's obviously very inappropriate. It's unappetizing. It's wrong. It's all kinds of things. But I just thought, why not? Give it a crack. Get people talking about it. So but none of the pop-up Halloween shops are open because of COVID, and online there's no guarantee that they'll be on time. I'm not going to order 200 of the things and be looking at them till next Halloween, and they don't really make much sense except for Halloween. If you got one of them another night of the year in your order for Sober Lane, you're going like, this isn't that funny. So it's just, and look, that kind of thing gets picked up. The customers have fun. Somebody puts on Instagram, and then a Joe.ie or EA Corp whatever sees it, and it gets a bit of press. But sometimes, particularly back then, people just get a kick, but it just wouldn't necessarily be on social media. So that these things were always happening. But and it's a prank. I know those things are probably €1 each or something. It cost £100. It was just fun, just fun. So we've what we are doing, I think, not this week, next month. The guys want to do it. A golden ticket, like the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory or whatever.
Yeah.
We want that. So we'll have a Sober Lane golden ticket, and we'll put one in once a week. We'll put in a random delivery, and the person gets a €100 voucher, things like that. It's just a bit of fun. So we kind of zoom in and out of the creativity. In that, what usually happens is that we'll see someone else do something. We go, why didn't we think of that? Like we probably should have. And it takes Sober Lane staff tend to be, so in Electric we have staff who have been there nearly since it opened, a long time. Whereas because Sober Lane is younger, you get a more transient staff. You get people here for 3, 4, and 5 years, but you'd get people who are working when they're in college, and then they go off and say the real world. So it takes people a while to get into that kind of mindset that we're up for doing inappropriate things, and some people are in social media and some aren't. So sometimes you get this mix of people who are really into and then not. So we kind of haven't really done anything with TikTok because none of the staff are into it, and it's just kind of, there's no reason we haven't done it, just none of us are really into it. I'm not on TikTok, and I kind of don't want to learn another platform. Whereas we've had some fun with Snapchat. We just did it for a couple of months, but it was good crack. We put a thing called a Snap Station. So outside the ladies' cubicles in the toilet, we had this kind of a makeup station, and in the ladies. So we put an iPad on the wall, and we put the Sober Lane. It was so you could send a message, but from Sober Lane and Sober Lane Snapchat. And just girls, when they're putting their makeup, you leave messages and have a bit of crack. And it was just, for us, we were saying, it's hard to come up with innovative content or fun, creative content every day. So we said, why not let the customers do it? And that was good fun. And then the novelty was gone out of it. I'll be honest, I think somebody probably stole the iPad, and I think some ladies maybe inappropriately flashed on the camera and this kind of stuff, and people were all very shocked and offended, and then went on to the next idea. So just things run their course too. So that's kind of, we still enjoy it, and we, as I said, like that, the Halloween thing, we could have done it for this weekend, but they're not available in time, so we're not. And then, as I said, so those ideas just come and go, and they're just a bit of fun. They're disposable, and they're not going to change the world, but they're a bit of crack, and Sober Lane is kind of built on that, because we're not the biggest bar, we're not the cheapest pints, we don't have the biggest beer garden. I didn't play for Cork or Munster. We've none of those natural, as you said earlier, it's a slow footfall part of the world. So we just we just need to be different, and that's the most accessible, easiest way to do it.
No, it's great. And I suppose, speaking of Snapchat and Sober Lane, you would have opened a second Sober Lane in Dublin in 2013, and you would have used Snapchat heavily to have, I suppose, promoted to search for staff. Can you tell me that story?
I can, of course.
If you don't mind.
I could, of course. No, I don't mind talking about it. I'll be brutally honest. So about Snapchat was exploding, growing, whatever, just coming on the scene when we did Sober Lane Dublin, and we were wary that so while we're not a student bar in Cork, we're near we're UCC, and a lot of students live near us. So while we don't kind of do the class party thing, a lot of students still come in. So we knew we were going to miss that in Dublin, and we said we'd try and get more of the corporate business, people after work and stuff like that. So there's lots of was it LinkedIn? No, one of the big offices, Airbnb. So there was some of those offices were around. So we're near Google and all that kind of stuff. There was one office particularly. I'm trying to remember who it was. Anyway, so we, I suppose we had that in mind, and also we just wanted to be different. So we were looking to get some headlines. So we said you could only apply for a job there through Snapchat, and it actually from a going viral headliney point of view, it was in TechCrunch and it was in the New York Times and it was in loads of cool things to be mentioned. We had a bit of fun with it. We stuck with it. We hired people through that. We had some great employees. There was a guy Dean who joined us and was super. I don't know. I think it was 15 seconds. I don't know what Snapchat is now, but I think it was or 30 seconds. So some people were making cocktails and videos, and part of the logic was, besides being attention grabbing, was that like when you walk into a bar like that, you don't have a whole lot of interaction with the bartender at the start. It's that initial connection is what, somebody gives you a warm greeting or engages with you and connects you, and that makes you decide whether you're going to stay or whether you're going to order food or whether you're going to have another drink or whatever. So there was some logic behind it, but obviously it offered lots of challenges in that you weren't getting a huge amount of information on people's experience and all that kind of stuff. But it caught people's attention. I would say the downside was 2015, maybe something like that. 2014, Dublin had probably reached peak hipster, for want of a better word. And I think people just thought, oh, this is just another stunt, that was one thing. And the other thing is that I misjudged the neighbourhood. So we're in a really nice neighbourhood called Irish Town, which is where Ringsend and Sandymount meet. And I was concentrating trying to get people out of town, whereas really I should have concentrated on it being a neighbourhood bar. Instead of trying to pull people back from town, why would they? Why wouldn't they just keep going forward into town? I should have tried to connect with the suburbs around us. And those people had no interest in a hipster bar or Snapchat or that age profile or anything like that. But of course, hindsight being 2020, it was good fun, and it got us headlines originally, and it certainly let our Cork followers know that we were opening in Dublin, so we got the word out there. And I'm sure I'd probably do the equivalent again if I was doing something new. But it like anything, had its downsides.
Look, I suppose you bought Sober Lane in 2005, and then in 2009 you purchased Electric. Now, I am just a small bit conscious of the time, because I suppose.
And I would talk for Ireland. You're quite right. Yeah.
Look, basically, what I want to try and get through with you, Ernest, a bit on Electric, purchasing that, and kind of the pretty really good events, because that ran for 4 years, and I don't know if it ended for a reason or if it's because you set up I assume, is it FSTVLR? Is that how you pronounce it, or is there another way?
Oh, Festivaler, and the business I'd forgotten about. Yeah.
Tell me, is Festivaler? Do you run like a burger festival or something like that?
So we don't do anything with it anymore, but it was something that worked really well in Cork, and then we took it national, and it didn't really click at all.
Okay,
it's bizarre, and we expanded our team. We the people who run Yay Cork, Katie and Johnny, the really interesting couple, they came on board, and we. The idea was to build a platform for people to run festivals digitally. Funnily enough, wouldn't it be an amazing thing to have now? And we thought about restarting it, but they're very busy with J Cork, and they have another side project, and I up to my neck and things we didn't. But when I say digitally, that it would be, you would organize it digitally, but that it was to focus festivals for business to happen in the individual businesses. So we had a burger festival, instead of bringing everyone to say City Hall and everyone trying burgers there, we would drive footfall to the individual restaurants. And so we did a Cork Whiskey Festival that ran 2 or 3 years. Cork Burger Festival went 2 years in Cork and then 1 year nationally. That was probably the most popular one. We did a dessert festival. We had lots of fun. They were subsidized by me. They weren't money making to any extent, but they're just good fun. And I just sometimes get frustrated with the lack of things going on for businesses to engage in. So instead of doing a burger week in Electric, I'd say it's probably the same amount of work to run a burger festival in Cork, and everyone would chip in, say, 100 quid, and we put that towards marketing, and off we go and have a prize. And we got some nice gaudy Goldberger trophies, and they were good fun. Yeah. I've run some festivals, big and small, over the years. Like the biggest one I probably did was the food festival, where we had 20,000 people in Fitzgerald's Park, which was a great buzz. I was way over my depth. I think it was like 26, and that was a big baby with 15 like full-on restaurant kitchens and stuff in the park.
Jesus.
I did that Oktoberfest for maybe 6 years, where we'd get through maybe 10 or 12,000 people in a week. They're all good, but they're just unbelievably expensive to run. They're financially risky. It's stressful anytime you have thousands of people in one place from a health safety point of view and all that. Not that that's anything we're going to have to worry about in the short term, I think, with COVID. But there then was to be able to. The downside was you could have a big festival on in Cork, and it sucks all the people to one venue instead of filling the bars and the restaurants. So that's where a festival came from.
Yeah, man, it's mad because like you've had your, I suppose, your feet dipped and everything.
And I'll be honest, I if I had the focus and the discipline to stay the course on some of them. So like I really feel there was and still is a business in that festival or model. But it didn't click nationally, and I didn't have the skills to do the technology, the back end side of it, where and I felt that's where the competitive advantage was in it. But it's something I probably should have stuck at. But I probably went on to something else. Maybe the gym was taking off at the time. So there's I've had some bad ideas, but I've had some good ideas too that were just poorly executed. Like in hindsight, it's frustrating, but it doesn't really bother me, because I guess as long as you have more winners than losers, you stay afloat and you go on to the next thing,
Yeah, as long as you're still making some bit of bob, and obviously, married, 2 children.
Yeah, I don't know. Life is good.
Yeah, sure. Like, what else do you want? Like, you set up something that doesn't last, you try, you fail, and sure, 1 or 2 things last, and that's all you want. Like,
and as I get older, I suppose again, like my kids and family do put a filter on it, but I definitely become more risk adverse. Like when you're 20 something, you've kind of nothing to lose, and you'll do the 90-hour weeks, and you'll take a punt on things. Whereas, like I'm slow to take on a project the size of Voodoo or Electric even now,
yeah.
And I suppose while the gin and whiskey business is a big business, it's grown into that. It didn't start like that. Whereas, like bars and nightclub stuff are big out of the traps because there is no real small way to get into it. No, that's not true. As I said, I had the partnership model open to me and stuff, and that is a good way for people to do it, particularly if they don't have access to finance. But like Electric was just a big baby, bigger than we thought it would be. So Electric was largely my dad's idea. Sober Lane was going well, and we were kind of looking at other projects. It's a couple of doors down from his office, and his father's surgery used to be next door, and he's a doctor. So like we know Sober Mall backwards. Sober Lane looks across at the back of it. So he said, look, I think this building would be a good investment. I think it would make a great bar. So we bought originally to be a late bar. I was always into the nightclub thing, so it was going to be a bar with kind of a nightclubby late bar buzz upstairs where the restaurant is now. And I don't think, was it 2009 or 2010, but it went up for auction. It was an ACC bank, and what was it? It was a nice building on the outside, or could be. There was nothing really inside. It was a shell. So I think sometimes when people think, you see cool bars being converted, like there's the Bank bar in Dublin, and it's this big, gothic, thing with cornicing and all that kind of stuff. ACC wasn't like that because it was built in the 70s. The bank was there, whatever. So the building's from the 30s. But we went to the auction, and we bid, and nobody else bid. And that was it. So then suddenly it was like, okay. So
we just bought a bank.
Sent somebody else to the auction. And yeah, that's what happened. So Dad said, okay, we've got, nobody else bid. There you go. So the project became real. So we'd done like back at the copybook costings on it, but it was hard to know what we were going to do it until we owned it. So we went through the rigmarole of planning commission, that kind of stuff, and went way over budget. And we so this was going in 2009, going to 2010. Kind of the economy was ropey. Probably realized at that stage that this, that recession was going to. I think it was going to last as long as it did, but it was going to roll. It wasn't going to be a quick bounce back. And while I thought people like Okay, you don't need when money's tight. You don't need to go to nightclubs. I think you'd always go to restaurants. You'd always go out to eat. Celebrate birthdays, that kind of stuff.
Mm.
So we said, okay, let's do a bar and a restaurant, and it was important that it didn't cannibalize our business at Sober Lane. So we made it everything that Sober Lane isn't.
Yeah.
Sober Lane's casual, electric, more formal. Sober Lane isn't cocktails. It wasn't at the time. It is now, but electric went big into cocktails. Sober Lane tougher, so not every night outside area.
Yeah, two completely separate markets.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. There's no TVs and electric, all that kind of stuff. So sports and students and Sober Lane and bar food and electric's more formal. So and thankfully it just hit the ground running. One big advantage to opening a recession is that when you open a bar or restaurant, you're the new shiny place for a couple of weeks, and then the next place opens. Whereas in 2010 nobody was opening anything, so we were kind of the new shiny place for a couple of years. So that was gave us a really good couple of years to get it to decide what we wanted it to be and that kind of stuff. So yeah, look, it is a big let me say a big business, and that 60 staff for me was and still is a lot to manage. It's a three-ring circus that it's got a bar, a restaurant, and a third space that has been an outside bar. It's been a fish bar. It's been a vegan pop-up, and we're in the process of converting to a cocktail bar at the moment. So it's going to be its fourth or fifth.
Wow.
Incarnation. So I'm
Brilliant.
probably the only person in the world renovating a bar at the moment. I don't know if that is wise or not. But we've two really good guys who've joined the team. Trafford, who is coming to us from being the bar manager in Ballymaloe House, and Carl, who is the main man from Cask on McCurk Street, which will be famous for his cocktails.
Of course.
So we were putting together a bit of a dream team for it whenever we're allowed unleash them on the world. So they're helping me design and stuff at the moment. So we've so there's always something going on there, but electric is mental busy in the summer when the sun comes out, which is nice. From April through September, say, it always does well for the jazz and for Christmas, and that kind of counts for most of the year. It struggles in the quieter times just because, as I said, it's got three spaces, so it can't kind of like Sober Lane can probably in the quiet times squirrel down to maybe 2 in the bar and 2 in the restaurant staff wise. Whereas it's hard to open electric with less than 8 or 10 people on, but thankfully, look, it's there 10 years this year, maybe 11, some 10, 11 years. And as I said, even despite COVID, we still had a really, really good summer. So hopefully there's another 10 years in it. It's probably where I base myself most of the time. I wouldn't say Sober Lane runs itself. We've really good crew there, and it largely does. Whereas there's a few more moving parts in electric. So that's kind of my day job, I guess, for want a better word, or my night job. And I really like it.
Yeah, you still you still deal with actual customers. You kind of do the, I suppose.
Every night we're open.
Yeah, would you be pulling pints now, like?
Oh yeah, I'll be honest, spend more time on the floor clearing tables and glasses for two reasons. One, because I'm not that fast behind the bar anymore, and I get in the way, and the guys give out to me. And two, I just can't keep up with the cocktails. I was never great at them. But lashing up pints not a bother. And in the restaurant, I particularly enjoy the restaurant actually because it's very social. For in a bar you just talk to somebody in that brief interaction, but in a restaurant you're talking to them for longer, and how was your meal, and we'd have a lot of tourists and a lot of corporate business, and I would have got to know some of the corporates. So I'm really interested in, they say, these guys are over from our Boston office working on this new project and Eli Lilly, whatever. So I find that interesting. And then for the tourists, make sure you go on, if you're having brunch tomorrow, make sure you go to Liberty Grill or Nano Nagel is well worth a look, and have lunch in the Good Day Deli, or tell them about the English market, and they'll be asking us about the menu and Tom Durkin spiced beef and that kind of stuff, or to be honest, telling about Kinsale Gin or Red Earl or whatever, flogging my own stuff. So I enjoy that interaction. So I and also look, it's my job. I guess I think that it's very particularly so we're going through the moment. We need to be very adaptable and flexible in what we're doing. Like I never thought we'd be doing click and collect or delivery from electric, and I think because I'm hands-on, I probably have the knowledge to to try and adapt it to it. Whereas if I wasn't as hands-on, I probably would find that more challenging now because I wouldn't know how the building and the business works as well. Maybe.
Well, not only would you find it more challenging, but you'd be paying somebody to do it. So at least this way, you get to kind of keep the costs to just yourself. So
true.
Very handy having a more hands-on approach to your own business there. So I suppose, electric was there, and you kind of 2010 up to, I suppose, 2015, you were heavily involved with different festival events, and then in 2015, if I'm correct, you set up Kinsale Spirit.
Yeah, my business partner Tom actually had the idea, and he got the ball rolling with his sister Clodagh. They're based in Kinsale. Tom's lived down there for a long time. Tom referencing an hour ago when we started talking, the guy gave me the first job in Cleavers.
Of course.
So he started looking at a whiskey, realized the time and money involved, and said, "Okay, let's get that ball rolling. But in the meantime, let's try and release a gin, and learn the business and try and make some money to fund the whiskey thing," which is what we did. So I said he's the Kinsale connection. So Kinsale has an abundance of good ingredients. They connect with a local forager, went out and tried infinite combinations. Like they tried seaweed and all the different interesting things,
No way.
things that do grow or can be found there, or things that you could grow in that climate. And then some of some of our ingredients come from the Middle East, and Clodagh had lived in Bahrain for a while, so she had connections there. So there's things like dried lemons, which are actually dried limes, but they call them dried lemons. Don't ask me why, but they do. They're black. They're most unappetizing looking things. They're completely dried up, but they have the most amazing smell, and they give great flavor when they're infused.
Where did you say they were coming from?
From Bahrain.
No way.
From Bahrain. Yeah. So and interesting things like we included vanilla in the recipe, and we've stuck with the same recipe. But there's a couple of years ago there was a massive typhoon. Most of the world's vanilla comes from Madagascar, and it was expensive to begin with. There was a massive typhoon there which wiped out a lot of the crops. So vanilla is even more expensive now. So there's been those little anomalies and side learnings which are interesting. We have and then we use hogweed, which is, people would know it from being kids. It can sting you. It's phototropic, so you get a little, kind of a burn off it. And not a very sexy sounding ingredient, but just helps the flavors gel. And then some of the ingredients that we used aren't registered in America, so you have to go and make sure they're not on any poisons list and register them with the FDA. And it's all there is, I mean, a lot of work, and it's a really interesting learning curve, because we've done this, like I'm flying it off there in 30 seconds, but Tom would be working in the background of this for years, all the different things. So and even just on that, so we I won't get bogged up. So Kinsale Gin is known as Summer Cove Kinsale Gin in America, largely just because not everyone obviously in America will know where Kinsale is, and we still wanted to keep the name Kinsale, but we just thought Summer Cove would be kind of, if you'd never heard of it, you'd go, oh, Summer Cove. And then if you looked at it, Summer Cove is a real place in Kinsale. We just thought it was a more, appealing sound name for somebody who didn't know it. But it means that we need two types of packaging, and America uses 750ml bottles, Europe uses 700ml bottles. So all these kind of logistics, and so I suppose we started with 100 bottles was our first batch, which is just minuscule. Sold them in one shop, Bradley's on our main street. They kindly obliged us. Mostly bought by our friends and family. Sold out in a week or two or three. Okay. And the next batch was 200, I think. Then 500, then 1,000, and so like this week we're working on an order for Australia, our first order. We haven't got the green light for it yet, but it looks like we will, and it's 15,000 bottles. Wow. So it's like that is still a big order for us, but it's just ramped up very organically. And until the last year, it involved myself and Tom meeting on a Wednesday morning and going through the emails, and that'd be it. We'd give it maybe 2 hours a week, and I suppose in spite of that neglect, the thing just grew and grew. So about a year, and fairness, maybe 2 years ago, we said, okay, let's take this seriously. There's serious opportunity here. We brought a third business partner, Colin, who was able to give the thing full-time attention, and we committed to him that within a year we would change around our lifestyles and how we run, because Tom owns the Raven and runs it, how we run them, to be able to put managers in place and give Kinsale Spirit more time. And I suppose one nice thing about the bars is the gin business happens by day, and then we're able to work in the bars by night. So while it leads to a long working week, they're compatible. We don't have to do one or the other. So, and once we started, particularly in the last year, giving it real full-time TLC, thankfully the results have been good, and it's growing kind of exponentially at the moment. Like COVID has been very good for the spirits business because the supermarket business.
That's brilliant. Come here. As a quick side note: Tom isn't the bald fella, is he? He kind of bald out of the
There's two of
beard.
them. They're both bald.
I know the manager Ray because Raven's my that's my main spot now. Raven and Impala.
But he's always there.
It must be the fella I'm thinking about.
He's the only bald guy who works there anyway.
He's your partner.
Yeah, he's my business partner.
I'd never do that.
Yeah, he's a very unassuming guy, but he's a great guy.
Yeah, no, he's lovely.
I've been stuck in lots of business over the years. He's been stuck in lots and lots of business over the years. And some, like me, some great successes and some not so great successes as well. So we're well matched. And Colin, our third partner, worked for Heineken originally. Has a seafood export business. Was previously involved in launching a vodka in the US. Has a catering company. So we've very disparate experiences and skill sets and stuff, which is probably why it works.
Perfect team. So that's brilliant.
Well, Colin is very organised and likes doing the paperwork and the finance and all that, whereas I'm allergic to it, like that, whereas I'm quite happy to go down a social media wormhole and, go and talk to a whiskey blogger in Scandinavia and send him over a bottle and see how he gets on, and whereas the lads wouldn't have the patience for that. So, just different ways of doing it.
Yeah, you're kind of bringing your strengths to the table, which is good to see. I suppose, can you tell me, is it brewing or distilling gin? What would the term be? Or is it distilling? What is the distilling process?
Yeah.
This is absolutely nothing to do with the career podcast or the business. I'm genuinely curious. How does one make gin?
So you start with making alcohol. So with gin, very few places will make the alcohol from scratch because it's cheaper and easier to buy it in. So you buy a thing called neutral grain spirit, and you technically probably don't need to distill that to make gin, in that there's no rules or laws around. There is some rules and laws about what gin is, but there's different types. So bathtub gin basically would be what they did. They'd put the alcohol in a bath and soak the ingredients in it, and then you add water to bring it down to your ABV to make sure you don't kill anyone. And
of course.
Our gin is a London dry gin, which means that all the flavors are added during the distillation and nothing happens after. Whereas, for example, Hendrick's isn't London dry gin because they add essence of cucumber after. So that's hence the cucumber. So there are different styles of gin. London dry gin, which our style would be the most common style, particularly say in Europe and traditionally. So the ingredients go in what they call a basket, which hangs in the still, and the alcohol is boiled up and it turns to steam, to gas, and it goes through those dried botanicals and sucks the flavors from them, and then gets condensed, and then you add water to bring it to your percentage. So gin distillation is a very straightforward process, whereas whiskey is far more complicated, largely because there's laws, it's called the whiskey technical file, around how you make it. So you can't buy in the alcohol, you have to make it. So effectively you make beer first, and then you go through three distillations, increasing the alcohol percentage as you go, and you end up with whiskey. There's different processes. So for pot still, for example, which the biggest pot still in the world is down in Middleton, Irish Distillers, the home of Jameson. So they that is made in a pot still, obviously. So there's different ways, and you'd hear triple distilled, so that's distilled 3 times, double distilled, all that kind of stuff. So I was relatively new to it, and I find it fascinating. And no good for your listeners. And a lot of people probably know me is that I don't drink alcohol at all. Wow. So I'm very unique in this business, I'd say. I used to keep that fact to myself until I found out that Mr. Teeling, who owns the Great Northern Distillery and had Cooley Distillery and is the father of Teeling's Dublin, doesn't drink either, and is probably the second biggest whiskey company in the country after Jameson. So I felt if he didn't need to drink, I didn't need to drink either. I'm lucky that I have business partners who love whiskey, particularly Colin, and loves tasting it and trying it. And obviously, being able to develop a product by taste is essential. So to have somebody on the team who can do that
That's
is
brilliant.
key.
I'd be kind of worried if there was three lads distilling whiskey and weren't drinking at all. So it's good to have at least one of you.
I would think the analogy I use is like, was Alex Ferguson any good at soccer? I don't know. I never saw him play. He was definitely a good manager. Like so.
Yeah.
It is a funny one. I bring it up because I think it's better to be straightforward about it, but it is unusual. I don't doubt it.
I suppose just moving on. Red Earl Irish whiskey. How 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 was that brand come up with? How did you I mean, who decided he was going to have a mustache and long red hair?
Again, we didn't know how look. There's lots of corners of the world where they don't know about Kinsale and all the things that had the botanical. There's no botanicals in whiskey, so the link didn't. We still like obviously the Kinsale Spirit Company, so we wanted to have our roots in Kinsale and this Kinsale and the stories inspired by it, but it wasn't going to be as direct a connection. So we came up with the Battle of Kinsale series. So Kinsale is one of the the only times it's featured on a national or global level historically is the Battle of Kinsale. So in 1601, and we won't get bogged down to know, but it's to do with the flight of the Earls and the Spanish Armada, and it's a really good story. So the three Earls on the Irish side, or the Allies, should I call them, or whatever. So there was two Irish Earls and a Spanish general. So it's called the Battle of Kinsale series, and there's going to be three whiskies in the series, each one a different style of whiskey, named after each of the three different generals. So our whiskey, what makes it largely different is it's blended whiskey that's first. So it's a mixture of grain and malt. It's aged first in bourbon barrels, then sherry casks, which give it a slightly sweeter taste. And then what's quite unusual is we finish it in Rioja wine casks. And the reason it's wine casks, for one part of it, is it gives the whiskey a nice pink hue. It takes the sweetness, the edge off the sherry cask, and gives it a quite distinctive flavour as well as colour. But also, when Hugh O'Donnell, Red Hugh, he's known as, so he's the Red Earl, when they lost the Battle of Kinsale, he fled to Spain and was on his way to the Spanish king looking for reinforcements to have another crack off the English and take back Kinsale. And he was killed by an English assassin in Spain by the Rioja region, and that's where he's buried. And it was a big deal because he was killed on Spanish sovereign soil. So there's a really big statue in honor of him by the Rioja region in Spain. It's still there today. So there's a nice historical link. So we source Rioja casks and age the wine in it, or the whiskey in it. So there's a marketing piece to it, but that is a genuine backstory, and then there's the flavor of the product as well. So they tie in nicely together. And the second is going to be called the Great Earl. It's a single grain whiskey, which again is slightly unusual as opposed to single malt, and that is more than likely going to be finished in Sangiovese casks, which is where Hugh O'Neill, the second Earl, was buried near Rome. So look, that's where the name comes from, and we knew we were competing against the behemoths that are Jameson and Teelings and that kind of stuff, so we needed to be different. And I like our logo, our label. I think it's quite striking. It's quite different than anything that's out there. I'm sure some traditionalists or some people don't like it, and that's okay too. I think that I'm okay with the Marmite thing. Some people love it, some people hate it, but as long as more people like it than not, you're on a winner. So look, it's been well received. We've won some nice awards already, and like we released it during COVID, had no great. We're still talking about a launch party, and we're kind of past that stage now. Like it's in 4 countries and counting. So it's really got a bit of momentum at the moment, which is nice. And for me personally, with the pubs closed, even just from a morale point of view, it's nice to have something that's going from strength to strength as well.
Yeah, it sounds great. I certainly know what I'll be getting my father for Christmas this year anyway. So we had to bring Red Earl home back to West Limerick, which surprisingly, I to go on a small ramble myself. In the same year, 1601. Have you heard of Glyn Castle before, Ernest?
I have.
Yeah, so I'm from Glyn originally, and there's a number of castles in Glyn, but the original Glyn Castle which is basically featured in a lot of the primary school crest. But that castle would have been destroyed in 1601 by
Okay.
I
Oh,
want
wow.
to say, no, I'd be wrong in saying Cromwell, but I do know it was some.
I think Cromwell was after that. I think.
Cromwell
Yeah.
was 17.
I don't know.
He was 1700s, I believe. But no, it's interesting to see that the siege of Glynn and is it the Battle of Kinsale occurred at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, no, it's actually a weird one because I think it was at the time the Knight of Glynn was his name was Edmund Fitzgerald, and the English captured they captured his son, and when the knight and his wife showed up to see the son, one of the English lords or I suppose soldiers, whatever you want to call them, was like, we have your son. If you don't surrender Glynn, we'll kill your son. And the Knight of Glynn only said, it's fine. We're young. We'll have plenty more. Not a bother. So yeah, that's what we learnt about in history in primary school. Yeah. But look, I suppose, Ernest, are you ready for the rapid questions round series?
I don't think I'll ever be ready, but come on, let's give it a go.
All right, so funny enough, my first two questions are Murphy's or Beamish or gin or whiskey, but you don't drink, so we'll skip those. So I'll move on to my third question: electric or sober lane?
Sober lane would be more my personal style, but look, it was my first one, it's always going to be my baby. So sober lane.
Are you a lover of the chicken coujons at sober lane?
Yeah, I eat too many of the bloody things. Although I was up till recently, I was vegetarian for 2 years, and I missed them terribly. So it's good to be reunited.
Brilliant.
Back with a bang and the good
Back with a bang. Will you ever open a third pub or restaurant in Cork City?
I don't think so. I look, never say never, but I'm kind of moving on to other things at the moment, the gin, the whiskey, and I'm enjoying it. So unlikely, but I wouldn't say no.
When are you most productive?
Frustratingly, sporadically. There seems to be no pattern to unproductive most of the time, I suspect. But I have these little bursts of. I'm a crammer, so like lastminute.com. So I'm productive. I'm highly productive today and tomorrow because we're going live with Deliveroo Crack from Electric for the first time. And yeah.
The exact same as you. I'll be there when you need me, but when you don't need me,
yeah.
But look,
it's a good way to be. I would have been a bad scout. The expression of the scouts: "Be ready."
Brilliant. What's your favorite book of all time?
I think The Godfather by Mario Puzo. I like all the old mafia crack in the books. I saw the movie and I enjoyed it, and then I read the book. I was like, oh my god, what a book! That or The Princess Bride. I'm a big fan of The Princess Bride as well.
Have you watched The Irishman?
I have watched The Irishman. Yeah. I enjoyed it. I'm a big fan of those actors anyway. It was long, but I enjoyed it.
It was long, but it was nice. It's probably one of the last great pieces they'll do together. But again, just 3 here left now. Can you give a failure that you've learned from?
Certainly, yeah. Soberlin, Dublin, just not enough market research on the location, the offering, big time. Just in hindsight, I know that we got our pitch wrong. So I would say with more market research is the word, but research on the area and what the people want and we're looking for and the demographics around, it would have paid dividends and maybe the thing would have worked better if we'd done that.
If you could talk to your younger self, what would you say to them?
Don't buy a pub in Dublin.
Brilliant. And best piece of career advice you've ever received?
It's nice to be nice, which sounds naive and is against all this dog-eat-dog business world usually, but it stood by me, the nice to be nice mantra.
Ernest, thanks very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Enjoyed that. Sorry we went so long, but I enjoyed it.
No, that's fine. It was a good chat. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. And hopefully
with the editing and the recording.
It will be grand. Look, hopefully in December, maybe January, if our pubs and restaurants can reopen, I'll call into Electric or Sober Lane. Yeah, it'd be nice to finally meet you. All right, buddy.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Thanks for the chat.
Cheers. Thanks, Ernest.
Cheers. Thank you.